Well, Joshua, welcome to God Size Stories.
Thank you so much, Patricia. It's great to be here. An honor to be on your show.
It's an honor to interview you. I have watched some of your movies before, Jesus, Noah's Ark, and I'm very, very excited about this brand new movie that you are starting. That's actually being released during Easter weekend, right?
That's right. Yeah, we keep saying spread the word. April 3rd. It comes to movie theaters nationwide through roadside attractions. They were the same company that brought out I Can Only Imagine back in
Mm.
2018. They've been terrific partners, and we just cannot wait to tell this timely story during our nation's 250th anniversary. It's just providential timing.
It really is because it's actually being released right during the anniversary, right? Celebration. So, like,
That's correct.
right there, which is incredible. And I honestly did not know much about this story. So,
Join
I
the
don't
club.
think that a lot of, yeah, I know that I'm not alone, right? I think that a lot of people do not know much about this story that's going to be told is a true story, because, of course, uh, fictional,
Yep.
historical movie, and I want you to just tell us just a little bit more about what the Great Awakening is about.
You got it. Well, thank you again. So there was a 30-year period of history that really revolutionized and shaped the culture that led up to the 1776, Declaration of Independence. It's the revelation that came before the revolution. The colonies were, pretty fragmented in the 1700s, and the first Great Awakening was their first shared experience. And for 30 years, they were inundated with this Judeo-Christian value system, which really allowed them to become a self-governing people. And it was an incredible, I would say, one of the most formative times in American history. And leading the tip of the spear, leading the charge for all of those revivals and the awakenings was George Whitefield, who was this powerful preacher, this evangelist from England that was known for this supernatural, booming speaking voice. And he had that his entire life. He wanted to be an actor. He went to Oxford University to study theater, and that's where he was born again. He met the Wesley brothers, John and Charles Wesley, and instead of using his voice for the stage, he decided to use it for the pulpit, and he completely turned the world upside down. I'm talking
Mm.
80% of the colonists here in America didn't just hear about George Whitefield, they literally heard his voice. He was like the Beatles. He was like Elvis Presley. People came from hundreds of miles away to see him and hear him preach. And that's what attracted Ben Franklin to find out more about this guy. And that's where our story begins.
That's so cool, and they develop a very interesting relationship, right? That you tell the story
Yes.
that that impacts the country, right?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say that their partnership is what sparked the revelation that occurred before the revolution. So what we have with George Whitefield is arguably the most powerful evangelist to ever step foot in American soil. There are historians that would say he's second only to the Apostle Paul as far as his impact and outreach.
Wow.
And it wasn't just in America, it was in Scotland and Ireland and England. Because of his theatricality and the way that he projected and demonstrated his sermons, he got kicked out of the Anglican churches because it wasn't, to their standards. And he built his own traveling pulpit and he rode horse and became the first itinerant minister to run to all these villages and towns and places and then countries. He came to the United States or the colonies 8 times. He spent 3.5 years on a ship, just going
It's
back and forth to
crazy.
all these countries. He was so passionate about Christ and the gospel. And then you put him providentially with what is arguably the most prolific communicator in American history, and that's Benjamin Franklin.
Yes.
So Ben Franklin at his press with his newspaper, this is the author of, the Farmer's Almanac and, all the
Mhm.
things, Poor Richard's Almanac, I should say. The Lord said, if I want to, I believe the Lord was like, if I want to get George Whitfield's voice out, I'm going to partner him with this guy named Ben Franklin. so who may not believe the same things that Whitfield does, but he wants to ride on the coattails of that success. And he printed all of Whitfield's sermons, his whereabouts, and together they had this incredible promotional team and partnership. And that's how the Great Awakening came to be. He spread the word of Whitfield, which is very interesting, isn't it?
Yes,
Ben
absolutely.
Franklin ran away from faith as a
Mhm.
young person. His dad wanted him to be a preacher. I don't know if you knew that,
No, I did
but
not know that.
yes, true story. His dad, Ben, was the 10th son of his father, Josiah, and his dad set him apart as a tithe and wanted him to be a preacher. Ben ran the other way, only to
Hmm.
become years later the greatest promoter of the greatest spiritual awakening that these colonies have ever seen. So
Wow.
God works in mysterious ways.
And he uses everyone. Like it's incredible, right? You read in the Bible, right? He actually used wicked men, right, to move forward his plan. And so
Yeah, I think,
this is incredible. We always think as believers that God has a plan only for believers. No, God has a plan, period.
oh my, yeah. I wouldn't be here if he didn't, because I didn't come to a saving knowledge of Christ until I was 19.
Okay.
And I feasted on, the films of the 80s and the 90s, Dances with
Yeah.
Wolves, these big epic films that Spielberg was behind. And when we had a chance to make our own feature films, I really wanted the artistry and the talent and the cinematography to be at those standards. And we feel like with A Great Awakening, which comes out April 3rd, theaters nationwide, that we met this uh, standard, as best as our budget could handle, which was a pretty big
Hmm.
budget. But the story is central. The story of this unlikely friendship. And they were considered best friends. They wrote letters to each other. This unlikely friendship that sparked this great event called the Great Awakening.
Hmm.
And, how else in 1776 do you get a body of people to be ethically and morally self-governing? They didn't
Hmm.
just wake up on July 4th and say,
Yes,
hey, let's all get on the same page here. They had
absolutely.
30 years of revivals to get them
Hmm.
to a place of being this moral, self-governing people. Not perfect, but
Right.
their posture was toward Christ. And they said, once we dealt with the tyrant within ourselves, now we'll deal with the tyrant across the sea. And liberty is not a gift given to us by a king, it's a right given to us by God. You don't just wake
Absolutely.
up with that. And
No.
the power of George Whitefield and his messages to the colonies really bathed them in that kind of belief system.
I love this. I'm originally from Brazil, and I
Yeah, I love your
remember.
accent.
Oh,
I picked
thank
up on something there. Yeah,
you. He's like, there are three flags. What are they behind me? Is she from Israel?
I recognize him.
Well, I anyway, I when I first came to America, I know I became an American citizen and I wanted to visit Washington D.C. And so my husband, who is American born, he took me there and I will never forget. It's one of my favorite cities in America, honestly,
Hmm.
or in the world. And I'll never forget reading scriptures in pretty much every single
Yeah.
monument that's there. And then, you go to the Library of Congress and you see the statues of Moses and Abraham and the
Hmm.
apostles. I mean, around. It's just, and people want to say that America was not founded in Judeo Christian beliefs. That is the biggest lie. And I
Hmm.
love that this story permeates the independence of
Hmm.
America, right? Of this
Yeah,
country,
absolutely.
the birth of this country as a nation, and
Yep.
this story of a man who influenced really the
Yep.
people who signed the Declaration of Independence with
Yep.
his preaching. I
Hmm.
love this. Is such an important story, Joshua. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that you were called to call it to
Yeah.
tell it. Now I have a question for you.
Thank you.
I know that there's a special significance, right? That it's being released
Hmm.
uh, during America's 25th, I'm sorry,
250th.
250th anniversary. So
Yeah.
why do you say this is the time?
Oh man. Well, first of all, we give the glory to the Lord. We feel like He authored it. We pray and discern, any story that we choose to tell, whether it's on our stages here in Lancaster and Branson, or on the silver screen with this film, A Great Awakening. We believe that He guided us and directed us to this story. Honestly, I was born a patriot. I was born in 1976, so I'm a bicentennial baby. So I've been a patriot since birth. The one thing that I did know 3 years ago when we started this film was that we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of our country, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be using the word liberty in a lot of circles. And I just fell in love with that word. And the verse from Leviticus that's on our Liberty Bell in Philadelphia is proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. And that was given to the city during the 50 years after William Penn's charter. And I'm thinking this is our 250th, and that's still on that bell, that word and that phrase. And I'm thinking, you know, the liberty that we believe in as Christians is only given to us because of what Christ did on that cross.
Mm,
And that's the liberty that was birthed, that birthed this nation. And this film doesn't have an agenda. We're not out to prove or disprove the faith of all of our founding fathers and Benjamin Franklin. There's enough information there that you can draw your own conclusions. But we just are passionate about laying a foundation of what liberty is. And we want to proclaim it across this land before the cannons and the confetti and the fireworks of July. We really want to just be a candle, that illuminates 1,000 more candles, to usher in this beautiful celebration of liberty. What the Lord did providentially by bringing George Whitefield and Ben Franklin together and propelling the messages of the First Great Awakening, those are still relevant today.
mm,
In fact, at the end of this film, and I don't want to give it all away, at the end of this film, Ben Franklin stands up in June of 1787 at the Constitutional Convention, and he delivers words that are unbelievably timeless and prophetic. How did he get there? This story shows you how that man, who has been a friend of every church but a member of none, for him to stand up and say what he did needs to be heard again. And that's what I'm so excited about is for Franklin to be back at his press and Whitefield to be back in his pulpit this year, our 250th. So spread the word. April 3rd, the film hits theaters
absolutely.
nationwide, and be responsible and bring your children, bring your family so that they can understand this part of history.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going. So everybody needs to join us because this is actually also a message that I believe is very, very important because the message of this movie talks about faith as a united,
Yeah.
is so fundamental for the unity at the time, right, of the
Yes.
Great Awakening.
Yeah.
Faith was crucial. And today, with a country that is still quite divided, right? It is a message that we need, right? Why do you think that this message today in our
Mhm.
political and social environment in America is so important?
Yeah. Well, great question. And I think, I just need to state this that politics are downstream of culture. And the First Great Awakening was a cultural overhaul. It's recorded in history books as the first shared experience. So you had 13 colonies in the 1700s, and they were really kind of marching to their own tune. When the Great Awakening happened, starting in 1739, it unified them. And, to a point where one of the delegates at the convention said, "We don't need laws.
Mm,
Our own morality will govern us." That's Can you imagine if they didn't create the
yeah.
judicial system, because of that? But
Mm,
that's where they were at. And so, what we want to do with this film is simply highlight the significant influence that men like George Whitefield had on this nation to create its identity and to consider what that might mean for us today. Um, I feel like it's providential that we're doing this film right now. I feel like it's God's timing and not ours. We were
Mm.
just obedient to the message that we were meant to give. And I actually think that people are going to be incredibly inspired. The film is already moving people. We're doing pre-screenings and we're getting so many
Yes.
responses back that people just are sitting in their chairs afterwards and they just want to process and talk about what they just experienced because it's not a movie, it's a movement. And
Hmm.
our heart is that we can also now be, a revelation before another, spiritual awakening.
Yeah. Oh, that would be amazing. And I believe that this is another reason for this special timing. I interview for God-sized stories a lot of people who are very involved in movements, especially across universities and even schools across America.
Yeah.
There is, as you probably have heard, there is a strong awakening happening,
Yeah.
especially in the Gen Z. Um, that generation is there's like a movement of so many people coming to Christ, not just in America, across
Yep.
Europe, which is pretty
Wow.
much
I didn't.
dead. Yes, dead for,
That's amazing.
it's being dead for the gospel. Many countries proclaiming themselves as atheists, as Germany, for instance. And we just think about the fact that the gospel that we experience in America, the Great Awakening, also of the 1800s, even as if you think about, these all came from the preachers that started it in Europe, right?
Yeah.
Like Charles Spurgeon and so many others, and they came here, and then the fire died down there, and
Yeah.
now the fire started dying down in America. So it's just like that
Yeah.
whole cycle. But then you start hearing, and I'm so, so blessed to be able to interview different people that are experiencing this firsthand. So let me
Hmm.
tell you, just from having talked to pastors and uh, to presidents of university, and this is a true timely movie.
Wow. That's so
You
encouraging to hear.
It really is. If you go to my God Side Stories show, you will see there are several interviews there of like university vice president of student affairs of the university, where the huge awakening, or I'm thinking awakening now because of the
Yeah.
movie, but it was
Yeah.
that started a couple of
Revivals.
years ago, the
Hmm.
revivals a couple of years ago, and it's just incredible what's
Wow.
happening.
Well, I'm able to have a front row seat at this because my daughter, I have four children and a son-in-law, so I have five children.
Oh, wow.
But my daughter, she is only 2 days away from finishing a ministry called Circuit Riders out in California, and she's exactly what you're talking about. What they want is they want authenticity. They don't want
Yes.
performance. They want a real
Mhm.
move of God, and that's what this film depicts. What is a time when people were hungry for the real thing, not smoke and mirrors. Even though George Whitefield was gifted with this booming supernatural voice that could be heard by 30,000 people in one
Incredible.
shot, it wasn't the theatricalities that moved people's hearts toward Christ. It was the message and the words that he was saying. I got to tell you about this one scene in the film that is getting a lot of response. There was a point in George Whitefield's ministry early on where he got kicked out of the Anglican churches because of his, demeanor, the way that he presented himself so dramatically. And so he took it upon himself to go out into the fields, the towns where the people are that weren't allowed to come into the church because of their race or because of their status or whatever. And so he said, I'll go to them. And he built himself a traveling pulpit, strapped it to a horse, and he became an itinerant minister. And he spent most of his life on horseback, going all over the world preaching.
Wow.
He went to a place called Bristol, England, where the coal mines are, and he set up his pulpit in the middle of those coal fields. And they were all under the ground working. This is a true story. And he started to preach. And his booming voice permeated the ground to the point where his diary says, his journal says, that like black ants, they came up out of the ground, came to his pulpit, And he said, I knew the Holy Spirit took effect when I saw the white streaks going down their black cheeks. That's the power of God through this man. He showed up in Philadelphia in 1739, November, just outside of Ben Franklin's print shop. He stood at the, and we share this film as this scene as well, on the balcony of Market Street. It's a city of 20,000 people at that time. They estimated that between 20 and 30,000 people were present to hear him preach. He traveled for the whole East Coast, up and down, just thousands of people. 80% of the colonists didn't just hear about George Whitefield, they literally heard his voice. And so for me, as a filmmaker and the company that I represent, we're like, Whitefield is in that cloud of witnesses right now looking down, and his voice is about to be heard again.
Oh my gosh.
What if the Lord allowed 80% of Americans to hear Whitefield preach again?
Oh, that would be
What could
amazing.
happen culturally if that would happen? So, the Lord's in charge of this whole thing. We're doing our part, but we're blessed to be partnered with Roadside to get this out April 3rd and move
Yes.
the hearts of men and women and children.
Absolutely. Well, just the partnership with Roadside is a God-given gi- gift,
There
really,
is.
for you. I know that because they are incredible
Yeah.
distributors of movies, very known. Like you said, we have Can Only Imagine and just so many others.
Yeah.
It's you pretty much almost every that I can remember, like almost every faith-based movie it's being distributed by them. It's just
They've done a
incredible,
few. They've
really.
done, yeah, they're incredible partners. It's like Ben Franklin at the press and Whitfield at the pulpit. It's a great teamwork.
That's awesome. Well, before we finish, I'm just curious because
Sure.
Sight and Sound, which is a company here involved, the production company, is known for epic stage productions, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I just this is just a curiosity for me. How did you translate that signature, not the epic signature experience, to a
Yeah.
cinematic format?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that question actually a lot because we're celebrating our 50th year at Sight and Sound this year. And this
Mm-hmm.
is our second feature film. Our first one was a film called I Heard the Bells back in Christmas
Yes.
2022. And the COVID is really what kind of pushed us out of the nest, to go into this
Mm-hmm.
arena and find our wings. And we did that because during COVID, theaters were shut down, but we
Yep.
had this ability to capture our stories from stage and get them, streaming and on the airwaves. And we were seeing tremendous ministry impact of getting our stories onto the screen and onto the TVs and streaming. And so we started to really feel called toward film. Um, and we knew that we have these, brand pillars, these standards of sight and sound, big, epic, sweeping stories, intimate, moving characters. So we wanted to carry that over into film. But honestly, at the end of the day, whether you're directing a film or a stage production, you're looking for truthful moments. You want to
Mm.
connect with your audience. You want to move their hearts toward truth through the power of story. And so it translated really well and very organically for us. You go from a 300-foot wraparound stage with live animals to this screen where the camera is 2 inches away from the face of the actor. There's obvious differences.
Mm.
Um, but what remains the same is our heart posture toward why we're telling stories. And that translated organically. And so we're thrilled. We're already working on our third film. We're a year into that. The script is just about finished. And we can't announce what
Awesome.
that is yet, but
No,
we're,
you're gonna come see me, right?
oh yeah, of
Whenever the
course. When it comes to movies, we'd rather, have quality over quantity. So we're only going to
yes.
make films that we feel called to make in the time frame that we can because we have stage productions also to produce.
Well, this is incredible. Listen, I watched the movie. I was privy to a preview, of the movie, and you can't miss it. Let me tell you right now, if you are a patriot, if you love this country, and you want to really settle that debate. Oh,
Mhm.
was America founded on Judeo-Christian values, or was it not? If you want to settle that debate, just go watch The Great Awakening. It will settle it once and for all. It is historical, so you're just a production based on historical facts. So you don't want to miss it. April 3rd, is that right?
Yeah, spread the word, April 3rd.
April
And that word,
3rd.
I like that. I like breaking that word history into two. His story. We want to share
Yes.
God's story in our history. And this film really, really does that in a way that I believe is non-combative and it's very compelling and it's true.
Yes.
We're very excited. So thank you for having
Absolutely.
me.
I love it. I love it. It was definitely for me a hidden gem in American history that was very precious for my to my heart. So thank you for answering this call, Josh. We know that God calls, but there's always somebody that's going to say yes or no. So I thank you for saying yes. And I say, and sight and sound as well for saying yes to this amazing production. So thank you. And we will put all this information on our show links, how to get tickets and how to promote this movie. Spread the word.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for saying yes. So spread the word April 3rd, agreedawakening.com. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Joshua.
Bye-bye.